Hey everyone, welcome to our final preseason video before the team selection, which I hope to be coming out tomorrow. Um, Today we're going to be talking about the Coppa Italia matches and what we can learn from them. Maybe I'll try to reference the Super Cup game that Atalanta is going to be having in the team selection, although that wouldn't make come out on time. We'll see, because that will be important as well to look kind of who first choice is for Atalanta as well. But it does come pretty close to start of season, and I do want to get the team selection out so people have plenty of time. Maybe I could try to find a video in between there as well. But this is right now planning on being the last preseason video before team selection game week 1. If you haven't already liked to subscribe, please go do so and join our league for this year. Last year we had 202 people by the end of the season. We're lagging behind that number right now, but as we're about to approach the game week 1 deadline, I'm sure that number will rise. I'll put the code in the description. Okay, but just as a reminder, so we do have one round of Coppa Italia fixtures beforehand. Generally, the teams that came towards the bottom half of the table, maybe just inside the top half. And the Coppa Italia is the Italian domestic cup, so they are competitive matches. They're not friendlies. And this is where the smaller clubs kind of see their dream for silverware kind of thing. They generally understand that they're not going to be winning the Scudetto at the end of the year. But when you play one match against the team, except for the semifinals, and whoever wins that game moves on, you feel like you can take that opportunity, that one-off game where it might take a small club, like a newly promoted club like Venezia, to beat an Inter Milan. Maybe they beat them not 1 out of 10 games, but they kind of hope that that's that 10th game where they can move on to the next round and continue progressing. And even some non-Serie A teams have made it pretty far in this competition before. So small teams do tend to play a full starting 11, whereas bigger clubs throughout the season, they use it as an opportunity to give more of their rotation squad some minutes to keep them happy as well. You'll generally see a backup goalkeeper for an Inter Milan or a Juventus be playing in the Coppa Italia and stuff like that. Whereas for the smaller clubs or for the bottom half clubs, they're normally playing their first team through and through. One other thing, there were no Conference League or Europa matches, I don't think, for any of the Italian teams preseason. So we just kind of get to see a little bit less of teams this year before the start of the season, but that's why there hasn't been one of those videos yet. So the first game we have up was Udinese versus Avellino. All of these matches, by the way, are a Serie A team versus Serie B team, I believe. So keep in mind that they're playing weaker teams that they will face throughout the season. But Udinese took care of business pretty well, winning 4-0. Brenner started and scored. If you're looking for a cheap forward at 4.4 euro, if you only really want to focus on 2 forwards, there's going to be several options right here where you're finding a forward less than 5 that could still start and come off the bench and maybe get a goal if you need it. But I probably won't start with someone that cheap, especially because we have some players like Retegui and Keane and stuff like that already priced pretty cheaply. Florian Thauvin, last year I got excited about. He was in my starting squad because he was listed as a midfielder, playing forward and on penalties, and then he did terrible. He just didn't do anything, and he was starting every game, but really didn't do anything. This year, same price. Still on penalties, but I'm just not as excited about him. But I thought I'd put him in there in case other people want to. We have Kingsley Ebueze. No, I didn't pronounce that right, but I'm not going to go for that again. It's a starting defender at 4.2. Kind of no, because it was Ebueze last year for Udinese that was 4.2 in that similar situation. This is not the same player, but similar story. 4.2 starter in case you're looking for a cheap defensive starter. But Udinese doesn't have great fixtures to start at the season, so I will probably steer away from their players for now. Next game is Genoa versus Reggiana. Messias Jr., he's had some time on some decent clubs. Seems to be a reliable attacker for the promoted side, but 5.4, so he doesn't fall underneath that 5 euro range, which would have been nice and maybe tempted me a little more to go after him. But he's listed as a midfielder in fantasy and kind of playing higher up. Genoa did get the clean sheet, so I mean, against it's a Serie B team, but still you can't allow less than 0 goals. And their defense is all kind of in the 4.0 to 4.8 range. So if you want a cheap option from Genoa, off to a decent start. Monza didn't have a whole lot to get excited about. I have the wrong team there. Who did I have the wrong team for? Now I don't really know. One quick little check. And that was against, who did Monza? So Monza beat Sudatrol in the PK. Sorry, so I think that's who they faced actually last year. But they won a crazy penalty shoot to 9-8 on penalties against Huddersfield, not Reggiana. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot to be excited about for the Monza team. Caprari took the first penalty. The only reason I put that in there is, does that mean he's the most wanted penalty taker on the team? That's kind of just why I threw that in there. Samuel Pizziganako. He was the starting keeper for Monza. He's a 4.2 million keeper. So again, generally these teams will put their first keeper forward in these matches. 4.2 is not, 4.2 is not a bad price for a starter as like a backup goalie. And just again, they didn't allow any goals. And they do have a bunch of defenders in that 4 to 4.8 range. So if again, within that range, you're just looking for someone that's going to be starting, because you never know when they can keep that clean sheet. But they're honestly mostly just going to be sitting on your bench as well. The next one was the first Serie A team loss for Hellas Verona against Cesena. Again, wasn't really impressed with anything for Verona. They have terrible fixtures to start the season. Plus, they just lost to Serie B team, so I'm not confident they can beat Serie A teams. It's easy to find cheap starters, but for really most of these teams, it is. And their only goal scorer, he was a sub that came off the bench, Kasper Tengstedt, at 4.6, which is more expensive than I'm willing to pay for anyone from Hellas Verona. I think just kind of what I learned from them is I'm definitely not starting with any of them. Empoli had a big win against Catanzaro 4-1. I believe last year it took Empoli like 4 or 5 games to just score their first goal of the Serie A season, not get their first win, score their first goal of it. So it was nice to see them pop 4 here. Both strikers scored for them. Sebastiano Esposito got 2 returns, and form is important in Serie A, and Jacopo Fazzini scored 2 and is the only 4.4. And is only 4.4, sorry. Davis Vasquez may be another 4.2 starting keeper. I believe Pizziganako and Vasquez are the 2 that were 4.2 that started. I think the rest were either more, or I think the rest were more expensive than 4.2. So I'll probably have one of them in my squad as my backup keeper behind Reyna. Now, one that probably a lot of people were looking forward to is, it's not very often you see a team like Napoli in these early Coppa Italia matches. So it did honestly look to be their first team, which I was a little surprised about. Maybe they don't have that last preseason game, so it's almost seen as a preseason game for them, like a competitive preseason game. But it did look to be their first team. But what's kind of disappointing is that looked like their first team, and it took PKs to beat Mottada, and they were actually losing in PKs at one point. I did watch a good portion of this game. Not super impressive for Conte's first showing with the team. Raspadori started pretty cheap for a striker at a team like Napoli, but he couldn't even score against Modena. So do I really bet for him to score against one of the Serie A clubs. I feel like they might try to sign another striker before the transfer window closes as well. And similar story to Caprari. Di Lorenzo took the first penalty, which I don't think he's going to be penalty taker in the side. But if a defender is ever a penalty taker, while I've been kind of turned off Di Lorenzo after last year, that might put me back onto him if he's on penalties for Napoli. Next one was Venezia. They have terrible fixtures to start. If you haven't watched the fixtures video, you should go take a look at it. But not only that, they lost by 2 goals to a Serie B club, Brescia, which obviously they were playing these teams last year. They are a newly promoted side. Really, all this team has is a bunch of bench fodder, which just means cheap playing players that you can throw on your bench if you want. The goal scorer was Jay Idzis, and he's a 4.4 defender, but I honestly don't think I'd pay more than 4.2 for a defender with Venezia. It is not like this defender is going to be scoring commonly in Serie A throughout the season. Another Serie A loss. Palermo beat Parma. We had a 4.0 starting defender here, Batonde Ballo. So a really good price for someone that's just going to be playing. Couldn't score. I get like the team as a whole couldn't score against the Serie B side. Dennis Mann was their PK taker. He missed those, so does that mean he gets taken off, or is that telling us who the first choice is? It would have been more clear and more informative, I guess, if he had scored it, but not a whole lot to get excited about the Parma team for me. The next one is a team, another interesting team that people have been looking forward to, but they did lose. Como lost in PKs. It was 1-1 at the end of the 90 minutes, and they lost 4-3 on penalties to Sampdoria. So if you're going to lose to a Serie B team, I think one of the more respectable ones to lose to would be Sampdoria, as they have just come out of being in Serie A for so long. Pepe Reina did start, and he's 4.4 mil. He's been in my team kind of since the start. Cutrone scored the first goal for Como. He's priced at 5.4. Serie A experience, Premier League experience. I could see him being a good option. Strafezza also had a strong start. I believe he got an assist. He's been in Serie A for a while, kind of hopping around the lower level teams. I personally, and I've seen around, there's been a lot of excitement around Como, and I kind of generated that a little bit as well. I was kind of hoping for a win here to kind of continue that, but seeing them lose to a Serie B side stuns that a little bit for me. But like I said, Sampdoria is one of the better Serie B teams, so we'll see. And they're going to face other teams like Venezia that aren't very good. But it was nice kind of to see some cheap starting keepers at 4.2 on some of these other teams, because Como does have Juve in the first game of Serie A. I don't think I want to be starting a keeper like Pepe Reina in that game. Next, another bigger club to kind of see how they started. And this was Torino versus Cosenza. Torino won 2-0. Zapata scored. He's priced at 8.0. You kind of know what you're getting with him. He's kind of your next level under premium players. So that's good to see that he's already off and in form. Clean sheet hints that despite Buongiorno leaving, the defense is still strong, which is good to see. Sal Coco and Adam Messina may both be cheap ways into this Torino defense at 4.4. Both of these players started. If their defense is as strong as it was last year, then those are definitely awesome prices to take into consideration. And the majority of Torino is priced quite cheaply, so keep an eye out for those players. I don't know if I'm going to be starting with any of them, but they're definitely players that could be useful going forward. Keeping in mind that because if you watch the fixture video, you'll see that a lot of the top clubs have the best fixtures at the start. So a lot of us will be staying away from these teams in this video to start off with, at least. But it's kind of showing us who their starters could be, who, if you want one of the really premium players on the big clubs, who you can put in, so then you can make value room for them without having just a player that doesn't play at all. Yesterday we had Lecce versus Mantova. The first goal scorer was a 4.2. It looked like center back, Chialonda Gaspar. Always exciting when a cheap defender on a random team kind of scores a goal. I don't think, again, that'll be regular, just like the Venezia player. But Nikola Kristovic at 5.4 scored late to put Lecce through, and they were tied 1-1. Again, though, I think he could be a good option. We'll see what kind of form he stays in. But there are other higher pedigree strikers around this price point. And I think with like the Retegui transfer and Moise Kean getting transferred out to Fiorentina, I feel like if you're going to pay for a striker in this €5 range, I feel like that's who you should be going with, at least at the start, until you see one of these other strikers really catch fire. Lots of decent bench fodder with cheap playing midfielders, some of them as low as 4.2 if you're planning on playing less midfielders and want some playing midfielders on the bench. And our last match was Cagliari versus Carase. Cagliari has really tough fixtures to start. I almost guarantee I won't be starting with any of them in squad, but Pavoletti could be a good budget option as a striker, falling underneath that 5.0 range at 4.6. He scored. If he can keep up that would be someone to keep costs down and still be scoring goals. That'd be great. Piccoli had 2 attacking returns and is priced at 4.8 as well. It's a cheap option. And that's kind of what we have from our Coppa Italia matches. They're good just to kind of get a little hint into some starting 11s for some of the smaller clubs. But again, with the way that the fixtures are going, I think I'll be sticking to the bigger clubs to start out the season and roll these guys in, hopefully bank some transfers and roll these guys in as their fixtures get better. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It's been great. We're up over 520 now, which is awesome. And hopefully we keep plugging away before preseason concludes. Don't forget to join the league, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.